What's new for Apple Podcasts? The latest from Podnews.net with critically acclaimed, highly addictive CBC podcasts. The next version of iOS and macOS will include a few changes to Apple Podcasts. A list of channels will appear within your library. There are improvements with the Up Next queue and CarPlay improvements too. It's also the release that finally removes the AppleCoreMedia user agent from Apple Podcasts, which will significantly improve the accuracy of podcast stats. The new code in iOS to achieve this was announced in June last year. Most other podcast apps have already put it in place. And Podnews has an Apple Podcasts channel. You can get our 3 podcasts ad-free by subscribing and supporting this show at apple.co/podnews. SiriusXM is still number 1 for podcasting, according to iHeart-owned Triton Digital. The January podcast ranker for the US also has a brand new number 1 show.
Live from NPR News in Washington.
Yes, it's NPR News Now, which has overtaken Crime Junkie. The ranker measures participating publishers only.
The online podcast creation tool Podcastle has added a new service called Revoice. After reading 70 sentences, the tool makes a clone of your voice so you can record podcasts or make changes just using text. Podcastle also includes a remote recording tool, a multi-track browser-based editor, noise reduction and automated removal of filler words. You can hear this paragraph read by Podcastle's Revoice tool in our Podnews Daily Podcast today. The service is at podcastle.ai.
Annalise Nielsen from Pacific Content suggests that brands targeting millennial women have been noticeably absent from the branded podcast space. We'll link to that today, along with an article from The Podcast Host, which looked back at Africa Podcast Day and links to videos from the event. In Toronto, in Canada, PodCamp Toronto is to return on February the 24th to the 26th. Admission is free, and you should take 2 minutes now to fill in the Podnews report card. Your feedback goes back anonymously to the podcast platforms and helps them know where to improve. You'll find that at podnews.net/report card, and thank you. In People News, Susan Wojcicki has stepped down as CEO of YouTube. She's been at Google for almost 25 years and rented out garage space to Sergey Brin and Larry Page in 1998. Neil Mohan will be the new CEO. He's currently Chief Product Officer for the company. And in podcast news, Abby Atkinson, the host of Don't Let Dave Win, is interviewed by Pod Bible. The show talks about tackling your negative inner voice. I named the voice, she says, in order to humanize it and make it seem less intimidating. In the Pod News Weekly Review this week, the history behind Hindenburg Pro, which revealed its new version this week, a look at the hosting company RSS Blue, and our live events coming soon to Manchester and London. And Australia's podcast of the year in 2021, Private Affairs, returns today for a 2nd season. The show centres around V, a Zimbabwean expat, and her Aussie partner Luke, as they navigate an intercultural and interracial relationship. The show kicks off with a 30th birthday trip to Thailand. This podcast is sponsored by CBC Podcasts. The team that brought you Let's Make a Sci-Fi is making a rom-com. With the help of Hollywood experts, comedians Maddie Kelly, Ryan Beale and Mark Chavez try to balance love and laughs into a fresh, funny and heartfelt movie script. Let's Make a Rom-Com is out now wherever you get your podcasts. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.